If your azaleas bloom once and never look that good again, it's not your fault. Most people are following advice that doesn't match their climate or their soil. Today, you'll learn the real-world azalea care that actually works in warm climates like Zone 9, from pruning timing to feeding shrubs growing in sugar sand. Azaleas are some of the most beautiful shrubs you can grow here in Florida's Zone 9. They're dependable, tough, and when they're happy, they explode with color in a way no other landscape shrub can touch. But the trick to keeping them happy is understanding what they actually need, not the one-size-fits-all advice floating around online. In this video, we're going to walk through the essentials of azalea care in warm, sandy climates. That means practical guidance based on how these shrubs really behave here, when to prune, how often to fertilize, what to do if your soil is basically beach sand, and how to plant them so they don't dry out or decline after a few years. You'll also learn how to avoid the most common mistakes gardeners make, especially the calendar-based pruning advice that gets so many people in trouble. Azaleas bloom on old wood, and the right time to prune depends on when your specific plant stops blooming, not on the month written in a general guide. Whether you're growing an old heirloom variety or one of the modern rebloomers, the goal is simple: strong growth, reliable flowering, and shrubs that stay healthy year after year. Let's get into it. Tip number 1. Understand azaleas and how they grow. Azaleas are one of those shrubs that seem almost effortless when they're planted in the right place, yet strangely stubborn when something in their environment is even slightly off. To understand how to keep them healthy here in Zone 9, it helps to know a few things about how they naturally grow. These shrubs have a very shallow, fibrous root system. Instead of driving deep into the soil the way a tree root might, they spread outward near the surface, gathering moisture and nutrients from the top layer of soil. That's why they perform best in loose, well-drained ground rather than compacted dirt or heavy clay. Here in Florida, we have the opposite problem: soil so sandy and fast-draining that without enough organic matter, it can feel almost like trying to grow shrubs in beach sand. Knowing that helps explain why some azaleas thrive effortlessly while others sulk. The happier the roots, the happier the shrub. Light is another major factor. Azaleas evolved in woodland or understory environments, where they'd receive filtered sunlight or morning sun followed by shade. In our climate, where the sun can be blistering for much of the year, giving them morning light and afternoon protection helps them avoid stress. Too much direct afternoon sun makes the leaves fade or crisp up, while too little sun results in leggy growth and fewer blooms. There's a sweet spot where an azalea gets enough light to set plenty of buds, but enough shade to stay comfortable through the heat. Watering is closely tied to both the root depth and the soil. Those shallow roots appreciate consistent moisture, but not drowning. In sandy soil, water can drain so quickly that the top few inches dry out faster than many gardeners expect. That's why azaleas often perk up dramatically when you improve the soil around them or water deeply during dry spells. They respond quickly because their roots sit right where the moisture is, or isn't. Finally, there's variety. Some azaleas bloom once in early spring, as early as February here, while others are rebloomers that flower in multiple flushes. Some varieties tolerate more sun, others prefer deep shade, and the colors, sizes, and growth habits vary widely. Instead of treating all azaleas the same, knowing the variety helps you time your pruning and predict how it'll behave in your yard. Tip number 2. Decide whether or not to prune. Azaleas are one of those shrubs that seem almost effortless when they're planted in the right place, yet strangely stubborn when something in their environment is even slightly off. To understand how to keep them healthy here in Zone 9, it helps to know a few things about how they naturally grow. These shrubs have a very shallow, fibrous root system. Instead of driving deep into the soil the way a tree root might, they spread outward near the surface, gathering moisture and nutrients from the top layer of soil. That's why they perform best in loose, well-drained ground rather than compacted dirt or heavy clay. Here in Florida, we have the opposite problem: soil so sandy and fast-draining that without enough organic matter, it can feel almost like trying to grow shrubs in beach sand. Knowing that helps explain why some azaleas thrive effortlessly while others sulk. The happier the roots, the happier the shrub. Light is another major factor. Azaleas evolved in woodland or understory environments, where they'd receive filtered sunlight or morning sun followed by shade. In our climate, where the sun can be blistering for much of the year, giving them morning light and afternoon protection helps them avoid stress. Too much direct afternoon sun makes the leaves fade or crisp up, while too little sun results in leggy growth and fewer blooms. There's a sweet spot where an azalea gets enough light to set plenty of buds, but enough shade to stay comfortable through the heat. Watering is closely tied to both the root depth and the soil. Those shallow roots appreciate consistent moisture, but not drowning. In sandy soil, water can drain so quickly that the top few inches dry out faster than many gardeners expect. That's why azaleas often perk up dramatically when you improve the soil around them or water deeply during dry spells. They respond quickly because their roots sit right where the moisture is, or isn't. Finally, there's variety. Some azaleas bloom once in early spring, as early as February here, while others are rebloomers that flower in multiple flushes. Some varieties tolerate more sun, others prefer deep shade, and the colors, sizes, and growth habits vary widely. Instead of treating all azaleas the same, knowing the variety helps you time your pruning and predict how it'll behave in your yard. Tip number 3. Know how and when to prune. Azalea pruning is one of those things where timing isn't just important, it's everything. The biggest mistake gardeners make is following advice written for a completely different climate, assuming late spring or early summer is the right time. In warm regions like Zone 9, azaleas often bloom as early as February or March. By late spring, they've already set next year's buds, so pruning then would mean cutting off all the potential flowers before they ever have a chance to appear. The golden rule is simple: prune right after the plant finishes blooming for the season. Not a few weeks later, not when you get around to it, but as soon as the blooms fade. That's when the plant is shifting its energy from flowering to new growth, which makes it the perfect moment to shape or thin it without sacrificing next year's display. Waiting too long can undo an entire year's worth of blooming potential. Start by looking for what truly needs attention. Remove any dead or damaged branches first. Those are just taking up space and attracting disease. Then, step back and check the plant's overall shape. If it's gotten lopsided or has a few branches jutting out of place, clip those back to restore balance. For older azaleas that have become thick and woody inside, thin out a few inner branches to allow sunlight and air to reach the center. That helps prevent mildew and encourages new, vigorous growth. The key is restraint. You never want to cut more than about 1/3 of the plant in a single season, and you never want to cut blindly. Azaleas respond best to small, thoughtful trims, not heavy-handed shearing. Power trimmers may be quick, but they can leave a hedge-like surface that looks harsh and blocks interior light. Hand pruners give you control and precision. Finally, make pruning a pleasant task rather than a chore. Use sharp, lightweight pruners that are comfortable in the hand and work in cool morning hours when the heat isn't bearing down. With the right timing and a light touch, your azaleas will stay full, shapely, and ready to burst into color again next year. Tip number 4. Know how and when to fertilize. Feeding azaleas properly is one of the biggest differences between "it looks okay" and "wow, look at that thing bloom." The amount of fertilizer they need depends heavily on the soil they're growing in. In rich, loamy ground with good organic content, mature azaleas may get by with minimal feeding. But here in Florida's sugar sand, nutrients drain away almost as quickly as the hose water. That means even healthy-looking shrubs can quietly run low on the nutrients they need to bloom well. Azaleas are shallow-rooted plants, so their fertilizer should reach the top few inches of soil where the roots actually are. A good rule of thumb is to feed established plants right after they finish blooming. That's when they've spent most of their energy on flowers and are ready to rebuild strength. If your shrubs look vigorous after that, you can stop there. But if they seem pale, sluggish, or sparse, give them a light midsummer feeding to boost growth before fall. The best fertilizers are those made for acid-loving plants, the same kind used for camellias and gardenias. They keep the soil's pH slightly acidic, which helps azaleas absorb nutrients more efficiently. Apply it around the drip line of each plant rather than dumping it up against the trunk, where it can burn tender roots. After spreading the fertilizer, water deeply to carry nutrients into the soil and wash any stray granules off the foliage. There's a lot of bad advice floating around that says to only fertilize if your plants look sick. That's reactive gardening, and by the time they look sick, you're already behind. Azaleas should be fed before they show stress. Think of it as maintenance nutrition, not a rescue mission. Regular light feedings prevent those dull leaves and weak blooms from ever appearing in the first place. In sandy soils especially, organic matter can't hold nutrients long, so a little extra effort pays off in a big way. The difference between neglected azaleas and well-fed ones is striking: lush, dark, green foliage and bloom clusters that practically glow. Give them what they need before they ask, and they'll reward you every spring. Tip number 5. Know how to plant them correctly. Planting azaleas correctly from the start sets the stage for decades of healthy growth. While they aren't demanding once established, getting the planting depth, soil, and placement right makes all the difference, especially in Florida's Zone 9, where heat and sandy soil can quickly dry things out. The first and most important rule: plant the crown level with the soil surface, not above it. A lot of outdated advice says to plant high, but in hot, fast-draining soil, that's a death sentence. The exposed root ball dries out too quickly, and within a few years the shrub weakens and dies. Level planting ensures the roots stay moist but not waterlogged, giving the azalea the steady moisture it needs to thrive. Choose a location with partial shade. Ideally, morning sun followed by afternoon protection. Too much direct sunlight, especially from the west, can burn the leaves, while too little light can reduce blooming. The bright shade under tall pines or oaks is perfect. Before planting, loosen the soil and mix in compost to add organic matter. Dig the hole twice as wide as the root ball, but only as deep as necessary for the crown to sit even with the surrounding ground. Place the shrub in the hole. Spread out any circling roots, then backfill gently with your soil mix. Water deeply to settle everything in place and eliminate air pockets. For newly planted shrubs that haven't yet grown large enough to shade their own roots, use a coir ring mat instead of loose mulch. These hold their shape, stay put, and leave the perfect open space around the trunk. Loose mulch tends to slide into that area and can cause rot, plus stray bits end up in the lawn, where the mower will fling them around like confetti. The coir mat keeps things tidy, insulates the roots, and suppresses weeds until the plant fills out naturally. After planting, water regularly for the first few months to help the roots settle in. Once the shrub is established, you'll be rewarded with lush growth and a reliable show of blooms year after year. Tip number 6. Avoid these common errors. Even experienced gardeners make mistakes with azaleas, usually because they're following generic advice written for totally different conditions. Here in Zone 9, small errors add up fast thanks to the heat, humidity, and sandy soil. Knowing what not to do can save you years of frustration and help your shrubs thrive. The first big mistake is pruning too late. Azaleas form their flower buds almost immediately after they finish blooming. Pruning even a few weeks too late cuts off those developing buds, leaving you with healthy green plants that mysteriously fail to bloom the following year. Always prune right after the flowers fade, no matter what month that happens to be. Another common issue is planting too deep. Many gardeners dig a hole that swallows the root ball, thinking deeper equals more stability. In reality, deep planting smothers the roots and traps water around the crown, leading to slow decline or sudden death. Keep the crown level with the surrounding soil, never buried, never raised. Overwatering is another silent killer. Because azaleas have shallow roots, it's tempting to water often. But constantly, soggy soil rots the fine feeder roots they depend on. Instead, water deeply but infrequently, allowing the soil to drain between waterings. In sandy soils, improving the top few inches with compost helps moisture linger just long enough without drowning the roots. Next is using the wrong fertilizer. Products made for lawns or general landscapes often contain lime or are designed for neutral pH. Azaleas prefer acidic soil. Alkaline fertilizers or liming products will slowly weaken the plant, causing yellowing leaves and poor blooming. Always stick with blends made for azaleas, camellias, and other acid-loving shrubs. And finally, neglecting soil health over time. Even if you started with good compost, Florida's sandy soil loses nutrients quickly. A little organic matter added each year, whether through compost, top dressing, or a light seasonal feeding, keeps the ecosystem under your shrubs alive and balanced. These mistakes aren't just about technique. They happen because gardeners try to treat azaleas like any other shrub. But when you understand their specific needs, they become some of the easiest and most rewarding plants in your landscape. Azaleas are living proof that the simplest plants can deliver the biggest rewards when you understand what they need. They're not demanding. They just expect you to work with their rhythm instead of against it. Prune right after they finish blooming, feed them before they show stress, and plant them level so the roots can breathe but never dry out. Small details like these make the difference between a shrub that merely survives and one that becomes a highlight of your garden every spring. If you've been frustrated by short-lived blooms or plants that seem to fade over time, it's not your fault. Most of the advice out there was written for cooler regions, not for our warm, sandy Florida gardens. Once you start gardening on their schedule instead of the calendar, your azaleas will show what they can really do. Thanks for watching Ground Truth Gardening. If you learned something new, subscribe for more Zone 9 garden wisdom, and I'll see you in the next video.